Happy Wednesday. Welcome into the CHGO Blackhawks podcast. I am Jay Zawoski with Mario Tirabassi. Greg Boyson off today, should be back in his rightful place between the two of us tomorrow afternoon. Thanks for being with us. We got a really busy show today. Some Hawks news to share. We've got a great guest, Ann Tokarski's coming on to update us on the latest on this newly developed women's hockey league and what it means for the players that were sort of maybe being left behind when the PHF folded. We're going to do that at 2:30. To start the show, though, we want to tell you about Marian Hossa's goodbye game and this freaking star-studded lineup that might be able to beat the Vegas Golden Knights if we put them all on the ice together.
Oh, yeah.
We've got another list of top prospects that the Blackhawks are highlighted in. And let's start with the real quick news. Our guy, Marcel signs a one-year deal to play next season in Rockford.
Yeah.
And it's really exciting. I mean, like, I know that we were all very we enjoyed his presser, and we were impressed by the stature of Marcel, but fifth-round pick, already being signed to play in the AHL. This felt to me like we wouldn't actually see Marcel play
Yeah.
for a few years. But now he's already in Rockford, which means the organization has to have some pretty decent thoughts about his NHL future.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those interesting situations in which players from North America, Canadian junior leagues, that agreement between them and the NHL where you have to have the age restriction to play in the AHL, it feels so silly because here's Marcel coming. He was playing with Gatineau in the Q last year, but he has played professionally in Slovakia before, which I believe is the actual consideration when it comes to his eligibility, that he could play in the AHL because he's already played professionally in Europe. But also he'll be 20 on October 31st this year, so he also meets the age requirement. But he's one of those players where it's just he could have gone back to Gatineau and played an elevated role in the Q and been able to develop there. But the Blackhawks figure, let's get him in our system. He's going to be 20, not even a full month into the season. There's really no reason for him to stay down in junior. He's a big kid. He's getting to that point where he's physically matured into his body. Let's get him into the professional environment. Get him into get him working with the Blackhawks coaches, the IceHawks coaches, the development staff that they put together in Rockford, and get him fast tracked. I think it's a smart idea. It's an AHL deal, so he'll be able to play in Rockford or with the Indy Fuel. So don't have any worries, concerns, or expectations that he'll play with the Blackhawks, because he would have to sign an NHL contract to do that. But yeah, I think it's a great move. It's a smart move to get him into that environment. And look, on the ice, I don't really have too many concerns about him being able to transition because of the physical stature that he has, being as big as he is. So I think he'll be able to handle the rough and tumble AHL. But just having the opportunity to have direct access to him through Rockford, I think that's going to be a lot of fun, because he's definitely somebody that grabbed everyone's attention and everyone's love and affection in the fan base very quickly.
Very quickly. A couple of people in the chat talking about Philip Kurashev, by the way. His arbitration hearing is tomorrow. And when Kyle Davidson spoke at development camp last week, 2 weeks ago, whenever that was.
2 weeks ago.
He said it's good business for Kurashev to take it to arbitration. There seems to be no concern that a deal is going to get done one way or another. They could reach an agreement today before the hearing, or they can just settle on what the arbitrator decides. But I don't think in any way, shape, or form the Hawks will be trading Philip Kurashev. That doesn't seem to be... No. I see some people kind of freaked out about it a little bit. Don't be worried. Philip Kurashev is going to be back. It's not going to be an astronomical contract by any means. The Hawks have nothing but cap space right now, so there's really nothing to worry about in terms of Philip Kurashev. We'll be keeping our eye on the wires as the show goes on to make sure nothing happens while we're on. But one way or another, Philip Kurashev is going to be back, so you could probably cross that off your concern list. Somebody tweeted at us, I'm just constantly refreshing my feed for Kurashev news. You don't have to do that.
Yeah, it'll be okay.
It's going to be fine. Okay. Yeah, don't worry about that. The deal's going to get done one way or another. I mean, it's not like the arbitrator is going to award him $5 million or something where the Hawks would balk at it.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to run into a situation like the Maple Leafs are with Ilya Samsonov, where he's coming in at $4.9 million and they're saying no, $2.4 million, and you're like, oh shoot, like that's not even close.
Yeah,
I don't think that's going to be the case. I think, yes, Kurashev will ask for as much as reasonably he believes he's worth, and the Blackhawks will set their number, and then they'll meet in the middle if a deal isn't reached in the next 24 hours or so. But yeah, Davidson had no concerns about it. I think Kurashev is in a good position in the Blackhawks organization to have a role in the NHL and have a consistent role and be able to be looked at as one of the young up-and-coming players along with the guys like Bedard and Reichel that are going to be playing this year. Like Kurashev he's not a prospect, but he's still in that like young developing forwards group. So I think, it probably best fits him to be here in Chicago and grow with those players alongside him. And Blackhawks seem to like him. There's no animosity. There's really doesn't seem to be any real concerns that this won't get done. You always want to avoid the arbitration process if possible, because things can get sour in these talks. But again, I don't think that's going to end up being the case.
No, and again, the way that Davidson said it was, hey, this is good business for him to do this. Like, it makes sense for him to do this. Maybe he gets a little more money. So,
yeah,
cool. Like, no one seems to be worried about it. There are some pre-arbitration settlements coming in right now from Elliot Friedman.
Yeah, I saw a few.
Gabe Velarde in Winnipeg, Brett Howden in Vegas. So maybe these are all getting processed now. So, like I said, we'll keep our eye on everything going. But can we, I've never worked in sales before. But if we've ever needed someone to sponsor anything, we need someone to sponsor us going to Slovakia for this Marian Hossa goodbye game.
Oh
I'm
my
sorry.
God.
I'm sorry. Like,
yes.
This is... I hope they find a way to televise this or stream it. Like, can the Hawks put it on the Blackhawks YouTube page? This game... And this is at last check. This is from a tweet from a Mario_Tirabassi on Twitter. Never heard of the guy, but seems great.
I've seen the profile before. Yeah.
Here's who signed up as of 3-4 days ago.
Yes, there have been additions since I tweeted this out a couple days ago.
Okay, so here's the initial list: Nick Lidstrom, Zdeno Chara, Dustin Bufflin,
heard of him.
Nicholas Hjalmarsson,
Pretty good.
Martin Havlat,
Heard of him.
Patrick Sharp,
Pretty handsome.
Marian Gaborik,
Heard of him.
Thomas Kopetsky,
Heard of him.
Daniel Alfredson,
He's pretty good.
Michael Handzus,
Cup winner.
Miroslav Shatan,
Uh-oh.
Satan to the kids, Michael Roosevelt, and Jonathan Taves.
Eyeballs emoji. Look, you want to talk about... is this the best exhibition roster that's ever been put together? Like, exhibition game, like, basically glorified beer league game. Like, this has to be the best roster of players that have ever played.
I can't imagine
Like,
anything.
even
this is like the Simpsons softball episode.
Yeah, exactly. Like, even like the like alumni games that they do for like the Winter Classic and stuff, this has to be better than that. Because some of those alumni games, you got like guys that were like cult heroes for
like
those
Jim
teams.
Cummins is on the Blackhawks team or something.
Right.
Yeah.
But this is like all of these guys have won cups, been all-stars, are in or are going to the Hall of Fame. Like, it's insane.
Havlat, I said trim those sideburns.
Yeah.
And
since that roster has come out, there have been a couple additions. Andre Sekera is also playing. There's a second one here. Lubomir Visnovsky.
Sure.
And one Henrik Zetterberg.
Jesus.
Pretty good player.
By the way, the way Hossa's doing, Steven, I'm sorry, I should have pointed this out to you earlier. The way Hossa's like revealing the players too on his Instagram, it's almost like an Ultimate Team.
It
where
is, yeah.
Like an ice cube comes down, it shatters and shows you the card of the player who's playing. It's on Marian Hossa's Instagram. It's so cool.
And speaking of that Instagram, he had past tense had two teasers posted. One of them has been deleted, but the one that is still up says, the hint is a current Slovakian NHL goalie, which I think is Jaroslav Halak.
I would imagine
would make the most sense. The one that was deleted was Canadian defenseman who I won 3 Stanley Cups with.
Seabrook or Keith.
Now it's been deleted, so maybe there's some commitment issues or whatever, or maybe that was just posted too early. But you add one of those 2 guys there, like, good golly, Miss Molly. Like, I don't know how difficult it would be to get to Trenčín, Slovakia. I feel like it's planes, trains, and automobiles, but damn if there was ever a reason to try and get there.
Yeah, that's for sure. All right, we got Hossa's Instagram pulled up. So, Steven, that top right one with Henrik Zetterberg, the Red Wing, if you click that.
Click it and play it.
It should just, like, open up.
Oh,
come
no.
on.
Steven doesn't have Instagram.
Boo.
Jeez.
That's weird. You have to log in to see it do it? That's weird. Anyway.
But
Most of you have
you
Instagram.
You can see the posts there.
And why don't you just isolate on that middle one right there with the 6-pack?
We have that picture in the files still. If you want to blow that one up.
I got
later,
in touch, by the way, with the because the latest post is if you're interested in merch, email this account.
Yes.
I did try to go on the website and order one of the hats.
Yes.
But they don't ship to the U.S., so I sent an email seeing if they would ship to the U.S.
Yeah.
And then I went to Google Translate and plugged in my question and had it translated to Slovakian. So hopefully they get it. The hats are really cool.
You can buy the jerseys, but obviously only have them shipped to Slovakia or Czechia.
Yeah. Well, when we get there,
if they can figure out send into the States or something, like, that'd be amazing.
Yeah,
those jerseys are sick.
I'm down for the hat. The pucks are cool. Yeah, I mean, now that we're close personal friends with Marian Hossa, and him and I are colleagues at Triumph Books.
Right, yeah.
You would think
your
that,
connections.
Yeah. You would think that we'd be just automatically done. But
yeah, that's going to be quite the event. I don't know. There's like 3 different streaming services that are broadcasting it locally in Slovakia, and then like European streaming services, which, if you want to roll the dice on your computer and try a European streaming service, you can do that. As far as I understand, nothing in North America of substance is going to be carrying it. If I'm the Blackhawks, knowing the roster that's there and knowing it's Marian freaking Hossa, I would say, hey, can we simulcast this on our YouTube page? It just makes a lot of sense to do that.
Just take the feed and share it.
Yeah.
That way
you might need a translator.
I wouldn't even care.
Just want to see it.
Yeah, just pull it up, right? Who cares?
Yeah.
It's such a cool thing, and
it's a great call to action on our screen there, Steven. Great work. Great work.
Yes.
It's going to take a little bit to get us there.
Sponsor the CHGO Blackhawks to Slovakia.
Call now.
Call now. By the way, smash that like button for us.
Yeah.
I forgot to mention that earlier in the show.
We get to 5,000 likes. That will pay for a plane ticket.
And throw in like a $10,000 super chat.
Yeah.
And that should help us out too. We'd appreciate that. Also, podcast listeners, make sure you're following and leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. The other little bit of news here before we get to Ann Tokarski here in a few minutes. Scott Wheeler, whose list we went over yesterday, he had 5 Blackhawks skaters in the top 50 prospects. Today he released his rankings of the top 10 drafted NHL goalie prospects, and the Hawks have Drew Commesso on that list, coming in at number 10. As well as Adam Guyan, who gets on the honorable mention list.
As did Arvid Soderblom.
Oh, Soderblom did too.
Yep.
Yes, he did. You're right.
He counted under the rules of Scott Wheeler. Commesso was on this list last year. Soderblom was an honorable mention last year. Actually, were they 9 and 10? I'll have to go back and look, but I know they both were mentioned. Commesso, I believe, was number 9. Yeah, I mean, we briefly touched on it in yesterday's show about, I think the leftover question was who's the starting goalie on the next Cup contender, and I think we're all still in the belief that Commesso is probably hopefully should be that guy, and he's going to get his first taste of pro hockey this year with the Ice Hogs and see where he goes from there. He had a very solid, steady, mostly reliable college career. He was chosen by USA Hockey on a number of occasions to play in the World Juniors, to play in the World Championships, to play on the Olympic team when the NHL players pulled out. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of belief in him when he was in Boston with USA Hockey. So I think there's a lot of belief in him in Chicago, and we'll see. We'll see what he can do this year. AHL hockey will be a good test for him.
Here's the little blurb here from Scott Wheeler. He says, I see a mature makeup as a kid and goalie. At 6'2", he's not big by today's standards for a goalie, but he blends a studious approach to the position with sharp angles, sound technique, and a calming, poised demeanor to keep shots in his chest, control rebounds, settle down plays, and hold firm to his edges. And while he's not a dynamic athlete, he can fall back on his athleticism when the play does break down. He's efficient in his movements, he's quick on his feet, and he doesn't put himself in any scrambles because of the way he reads the play. Comesso reliably makes the saves that he should and plays the same to game. He doesn't steal a ton of starts, and I wouldn't say he's got any A-plus tools that really pop, but there's not a lot in his game that you can nitpick either. I'm not convinced he's going to be a starter at the next level, but I, and the rest of the hockey world, fully expect him to become an NHL goalie. So there you go.
You know what he sounds like? Corey Crawford. Similar size.
Yeah.
Similar style. I'm not going to say he's going to be Corey Crawford, but a guy who's efficient in his movement, makes the saves that he's supposed to, can fall back on his athleticism, but he's not Jonathan Quick where he's just flipping and flopping and gymnastics all over the place to make saves. So, look, like I think the tools are there in the chest, and just it's so annoying to me, and this is not a Scott Wheeler specific thing. This is a hockey analyst specific thing. It's so annoying to me how a 6'2" goalie is undersized.
Yeah,
how
tall's the net?
Like, you know how big 6'2" is? Like that's big enough. It's 6'1", big enough. 6 foot, big enough. Not every goalie has to be 6'6", 6'7" to be, effective. Like, yes, is it better to cover as much of the net as possible?
It'd be great to be Patrick Waugh.
Sure.
Where you're this giant person that takes up 80% of the net just standing there.
Not every goalie is going to be Andrei Vasilevsky. Like, you're going to have guys who can make up for the 1 or 2 inches that they're giving up in size with their positioning, with their athleticism, with all these different things. So being 6'2" and being like, oh, it's not ideal. It's like, damn, man. It's harsh.
I think the size thing in general is a bit overhyped. Like, Dominik Hasek was 6'1", Eddie Belfour was 5'11". He did fine.
Yeah.
Eddie Belfour, pretty good, last I checked.
Right.
Braden Holtby's not a big dude. He was a good goalie for a long time.
UC Saros is like barely bigger than I am.
It's
he's
just
pretty good.
It's goalies and it's skaters too. Like, well, Connor Bedard, he's only 5'10". Well, Crosby's 5'11".
Right.
You never hear anything about Crosby's size. Is that 1 inch going to be the difference between success and failure?
People do not believe Sidney Crosby is 5'11". If you look for it, there are some conspiracy theories that he is maybe 5'9".
Oh, smaller than 5'11".
So that would be interesting. If I ever get to stand next to Sidney Crosby and he's not wearing skates, we'll see how big he is in real life, because I'm 5'9".
Yeah.
But yeah, I just not to deviate, but that's just one thing that I'm just like, a 6'2" goalie sounds perfectly fine to me. That's not an issue.
We'll give you the top 10 here. Jesper Wallstedt for the Wild is number 1. Number 2, Yaroslav Askarov from Nashville. Dustin Wolf of the Calgary Flames, another small guy. He's number 3.
2-time AHL goalie of the year.
Yeah, that worked out. Devin Levi for Buffalo is 4. Number 5, Sebastian Kosa. Number 6, Lucas Dostal from Anaheim. Number 7, Pyotr Kochekov from Carolina.
Chicago Wolves goalie.
Yep. 8, Akira Schmid. What a great name for the Devils.
Oh, yeah.
And number 9, Samuel Urson of the Flyers. So there you go. There's your top 9 with Drew Comesso coming in at number 10.
No goalies drafted this year, right? No, none. No goalies drafted this year.
No.
Because the first one off the board was Guyan with the Blackhawks, and he was honorable mention. And Michael Hrabel was another guy. Carson Bjarnason was another one taken this year. But yeah, all those goalies drafted in previous years.
Yeah, interesting. I think goalies just take longer to develop. And on your Corey Crawford thing too, like, at no point was he considered an elite goalie prospect.
Not as a prospect.
It was kind of, maybe NHL guy, maybe like a B-level starter.
Spent, 4 or 5 years in Rockford?
Yeah, it took a long time for him to come to the NHL full time. And part of that was the Hawks had Niemi, and they had some other guys that were ready to go, Hobby Bowen. But then when he came up, he didn't go back down. And I still think, and I think most people watching this podcast would agree, that Corey Crawford is criminally underrated.
Yes. Corey Crawford spent as much time in the minors as, or enough time for him to play for both the Rockford Ice Hogs and the Norfolk Admirals.
There you go. There's a good throwback for your
the Ice Hogs before the Ice Hogs.
Yeah. There you go. I mean, goalies are weird. They're hard to predict. They're hard to develop. Yeah. But so far, everything Comesso has done has been good and has been kind of on a trajectory expected, or hasn't been that moment for him where you're like, ugh, maybe he's not the guy.
And even the times where he was kind of underperforming in college, it was, and he talked about it at development camp, he was injured, and he spent a portion of the season dealing with mono, which made him lose, what was it, 15 pounds?
Yeah, some crazy amount of weight.
A crazy amount of weight that he dropped. So that completely takes you out of your game physically, and especially as a goalie, like, your movements and your weight and your energy level, that's all important. So so the struggles that he's had in college have basically only been tied to he's not at 100%. So I have no qualms about him. And look, to have three guys in this group puts the Blackhawks in a good position with their goaltending position. They have Soderblom, Comesso, Guyan that are all in the mix. And I think out of one of those three, I think you're going to get a quality NHL starter. Guyan's going to be going to Michigan State, where he'll have a good opportunity to have a chance to be number one guy there. Soderblom's going to get his, likely is a full-time NHLer this year. And Comesso, full-time AHLer, might get a few NHL starts here or there, depending on, whether he earns opportunities or injuries that might come up. I think they're in a good position with their goaltenders.
Corey says he completely forgot about the Norfolk Admirals. It seems like forever ago it did. Yeah. He also asked earlier if there's a place to watch AHL games at home. Yes, AHL TV is great. You just sign up for the season, and you get every game every night. You could put on your, if you have a Roku or an Apple TV or whatever, it has its own individual app. Mm-hmm. You can pick the home or road feed. They're not always available for both because some games are just not broadcast, but you can find most games most nights on AHL TV.
Yeah, and they have different packages that you can get. You can get the whole experience where you get all the AHL games all the time. You can get team specific. So if you just care about the Ice Hogs, you can just sign up and get all 76 games of the Ice Hogs. You can get all the home games. It's definitely worth it if you're investing in watching the Ice Hogs. I've done it. It's great. It's a solid service, and it's good to have. And I know some broadcasts, if you're for other teams and stuff, some broadcasts are better than others. The Ice Hogs do a very good job with their game broadcast. So it's not only are you going to be able to at least see the action, you're going to get a quality broadcast too.
Yeah. It's a good thing to do. It's good investment if you're going to watch multiple Rockford Ice Hogs games, and why wouldn't you? Because there's a lot of guys to watch down there.
But before we talk about Pins and Aces and the golf outing coming up, and before we get to Ann, back to the Hossa thing.
Yeah.
If you were doing the Jay Zawoski charity hockey game, and you could invite 3 former players, who would you invite?
3 former Hawks?
Just whoever. 3 former players, you extend the invitation, and they accept.
Okay, first one is Jeremy Roenick.
Okay.
Who is my favorite player. The guy that made me fall in love with hockey.
Yep.
My favorite all-time non-Blackhawk is Pavel Bure.
Pavel Bure.
He would be invited for sure. I probably need a defenseman here, huh? Or a goalie.
Yeah.
I was always an irrational fan of Jocelyn Thibault.
Yeah.
So I would have him come and show up and be the goalie.
Solid.
Yeah.
Solid group.
How about you?
I would extend the invitation to Marian Hossa. See if he would reciprocate. Maybe he'll send me the invitation to his game. One of the guys that like Roenick for you that really cemented me getting into hockey. And we don't hear a lot from since his playing days have ended. But I would reach out extend an invitation to Paul Kariya. He was
Okay.
one of those, when I first got into hockey, he was one of those guys that I latched on to as like, he's small, he's super good. I want to see myself in him. Obviously it didn't pan out, but it was still somebody that like really got me into the sport for sure. And then the third one I would reach out to would be just for, I think, just the entertainment value and a guy that I think would have fun in that environment is Ilya Bryzgalov.
Oh yeah,
I think that would be a lot
yeah.
of fun. He seems like a fascinating person, and just we'd at the Mario Terabasi charity hockey game, we would put a mic on him and do some social content with
I think
him.
it's funny that you choose guys like Korea that you identify with as like, this is a guy like me.
Yeah.
I have always been drawn to the players or whatever that are not like me at all.
Yeah.
Like, if I was a hockey player, I would not be Pavel Bure.
Right.
Like, he's small and he's fast and he's like, and from like growing up, my favorite wrestler was always Shawn Michaels. I am
Yeah.
nothing like Shawn Michaels, nothing like him. Right.
Yeah.
Like, but I was always like, God, it's so cool. Like his level of confidence and his comfort in his own skin. I always was sort of attracted to people I thought had what I don't. So that's, I don't know. It's interesting that you would go that way. Cause
Matthew Tkachuk now.
I
Are you
don't know,
feel like you're
who
like
are the
him?
guys that I identify with in the league? Let's see, Dustin Byfuglien.
Phil Kessel,
Who is the guy with all the pancakes? The Canuck. Well, I can't think of it. Kyle Wellwood.
Kyle Wellwood.
Was he the one that was always? Let's
I'm
see,
not sure.
Kyle Wellwood.
Did he have a
Fat.
pancake restaurant or something?
There was something
Wellwood's
about him eating
pancakes?
too many pancakes. Wait, or was it Dustin Penner?
I
whoever-
know.
I don't know,
Dustin
whoever it
Penner had
was.
other
Whoever it was.
interests.
Yeah.
But-
Phil Kessel, Ken
Yeah.
Hitchcock. These are my guys. These are my people.
Also, shout out Phil Kessel, National Hot Dog Day.
Absolutely.
Please, Kyle, make him a Blackhawk. That would just make my day.
Last little bit of news we got to get to. It looks like the league is working towards getting the NHL players back into the Olympics
Yes.
in time for 2026.
Yep.
Quote here from Marty Walsh, who is the NHLPA executive director. This is via Greg Wyshynski and ESPN. Quote, my focus is to try and make that happen. I'm working with Gary Bettman collectively together with the IIHF, and hopefully we'll be able to come up with an agreement and move forward. A lot of players from around the globe want to play for their home country. They want that best-on-best tournament. They want to be part of it. And then Bill Daly told ESPN, we are still working to facilitate participation in the 2026 Milan Olympics. So
Milan.
it sounds like all sides are trying to make it happen. I know that
just
with the games in Sochi and the games in China, there were some political things probably, and the time zone thing was a major factor then too. A little easier on all fronts in Milan. But I think if you're going to do it, you just have to do it. You can't just cherry pick year to year.
if you're gonna do it, you have to commit to it. And yeah, it's a damn shame that guys like Connor McDavid and Austin Matthews haven't played in a best on best situation for Team Canada or Team USA. Like it's a shame. And I would love for the NHL players to go back to the Olympics and have that experience again for themselves, for the Olympics, and for the game itself to grow. Like you to have those players on that stage is incredible. But if it's not the Olympics, just do your own tournament. World Cup of Hockey,
it was great.
Went over so well.
Yep.
And it's been 7 years, and they're just like, nope. Like, just why?
Just do it.
You control everything.
Yeah.
You can control the location. You control the advertising. You can control all the health waivers and crap like that. Like, just control your own stuff. You get all the money. It just, I don't know. It just makes sense to me that
It's too logical for the NHL to do.
that should be a staple for the league and for men's hockey. But hey, as far as best on best goes, we're going to talk to Ann Tokarski here in a couple minutes. As far as best on best goes, for international hockey, USA and Canada and the women's game has not missed a beat, and it's gotten better every year. So hey, men's game, you got to step your game up and get up to the level of the women. Hey, speaking of stepping your game up, you can step your game up on the golf course. Maybe not in your bag with the golf clubs, but at least in the clothes that you wear with gear from Pins and Aces, the official golf apparel partner of ALLCITY and of us here at CHGO. They have some of the best gear around. They are a family-owned and operated golf apparel business, which is great to see, making amazing polos, hats, golf bags, and, of course, the beer sleeve that can also be used as a beef sleeve. The product that allows you to store 7 beers right inside your golf bag and keep those drinks cold for the entire round. We tested it with beefs. It also works there.
Hot dogs?
Probably could do hot dogs as well. Not too dissimilar from a beef.
Pizza puffs?
Pizza puffs, maybe. That's been a topic of conversation in the office today. I think I walked into a conversation I wasn't fully aware of. Check out pinsandaces.com. Use the code CHGO. When you do that, you're going to get 15% off of your first order, and you're going to get free shipping on that order. Again, that's pinsandaces.com with the promo code CHGO. And do not forget, speaking of golf, Pins and Aces and CHGO, we are all collaborating together along with the Big Drive Energy Golf Podcast for the first ever CHGO Kickoff Classic happening Friday, August 25th at Cog Hill. Course number 2, the Ravines, I believe is what it's called. A tremendous course for a tremendous event. The golf, not as tremendous, but it'll be a good time. The vibes will be high. It'll be just a wonderful event. Hopefully some beautiful weather for the beautiful course. Go to allchgo.com/events. You can get all the event info there. You can sign up to golf for yourself or a twosome or a foursome. The more the merrier. Prizes for first place and last place, gifts for everybody who shows up and plays some golf. You get access to the Pins and Aces /CHGO crossover polo, which looks amazing. That's going to definitely, when it gets in my possession, be in my rotation of shirts, not just on the golf course, but everywhere.
in general.
Just in general.
Yeah.
I might even wear it to sleep. It's such a
There you
beautiful
go.
design.
Absolutely.
So yeah, sign up. It's going to be a great time. Die Hard, save 20%.
The Ravines. That sounds like there's a lot of water.
There is. I remember there's a hole that you have to shoot over water uphill, and I
Yeah.
always end
Over
up
water,
in the
uphill?
water. Yeah.
I'm just going to take a ball and just throw it directly in the water and just donate it to the golf gods and just say, it's
There
going to
you
end up
go.
here anyway.
Yeah.
So here it is, and I'll just play around. I'll just drop it on the other side.
Over the ravine and up a hill. Was this golf course created by a 1940s grandfather?
Maybe.
Uphill-
I think it was just created
uphill
uphill
both
both
ways.
Yeah, and over the river.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
it's my favorite Led Zeppelin song. But yeah, it's going to be a great time. I'm really looking forward to it. I suck at golf, but I am very much looking forward to getting out there and getting up and down the links at
It's going to be a good time.
Yeah, absolutely. And look around our set. See all those cool bobbleheads and all the cool decor behind us. That is courtesy of our friends at FOCO. But it's not just bobbleheads at FOCO. You can get fitted out in the best sports gear around. Hoodies, shoes, signs, bobbleheads, banana hammocks, and everything in between. It's baseball season. I'm going to the Cubs game today.
Nice.
Aloha shirts, straw hats, polos, bags, everything you need for a game. Check it out, foco.com, or click the link in our description below. And for all non-presale items, use the promo code CHGO for 10% off your order. Again, that's foco.com, FOCO.com.
.com, yes. And now, as I mentioned before about the women's game, we are joined by Ann Tokarski. You can see some of her contributions to women's hockey with the Ice Garden, Title IX Sports, formerly of the Connecticut Whale, and working with the ECAC, the Eastern Collegiate Athletic Conference. She's going to get us caught up on all the happenings of the newly developed Professional Women's League. Ann, thanks for your time. Thanks for joining us today. How you doing?
I'm great. How are you guys?
We're doing good. We're sans hot dogs on National Hot Dog Day, which is a little disappointing.
That's all right.
But
The day is long.
yeah,
Like I said, I'm
it's
going
only
to Wrigley,
2:30.
so I'm sure I'll find a couple glizzies on my way.
Yes. You'll find one.
All right, and this all sort of happened like right during the draft. And we were very kind of, obviously, in Chicago, distracted by things happening at the NHL draft this year. I'm going to do my best to quickly summarize what happened. Back in June, the PHF, the Professional Hockey Federation,
Premier Hockey
Federation, just all of a sudden was gone. And all of the players and all of the staff were kind of given a 3-hour warning that they were out of work. what's happening now is there is a collective conglomeration coming together to have one unified women's hockey league. To the outside observer, that seems like a good thing, right? One league that the NHL can get behind and everybody plays for the same thing, better for broadcast and all that. But in the short term, Ann, what are some of the things that have been issues for the players and the staff involved?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the biggest issues that we're kind of faced with right now is the fact that of all of the teams, I guess start from the beginning. Prior to the PWHPA announcing that their investors would be buying the PHF, it was the kind of assumption was that there would be the 7 teams in the PHF competing, and there would be 4 PWHPA teams competing in their brand new league, which obviously put those two numbers together, that's 11 teams. And now with the investors backing the PWHPA, purchasing the PHF, they have kind of put out there that there are only going to be a maximum of 6 teams in this new iteration of this new league. And I think when you kind of go from, like ages ago, there was this discussion about there is not enough women's hockey talent for 2 leagues. And I think, the past couple of years have really shown that that absolutely isn't the case. And now you're going from what could have been 11 teams down to 6 teams with 23 players. Not really that great at math, especially not mental math, but even I know that that's so many players who are going to be out of a spot competing, playing women's hockey. There are so many collegiate players who were signed in the PHF who, might not have a spot in this new league. I think that's really just the biggest takeaway that I have, just knowing that, there are only going to be 6 teams. You're not going to be able to fit 7 or 11 teams worth of front office staff on 6 teams. You're not going to be able to fit that many players on 6 teams. It's exciting news, definitely, but I also think it's a little deeper than just surface level, I would say.
Yeah, and just, for those that are saying like, well, it is what it is and the best players should play on the best teams, that's all well and good, but a lot of these players, a month ago were buying homes close to their PHF teams thinking I have a 3-year contract, so I'm going to be here for 3 years, so I'm going to move to Montreal or I'm going to move to Boston or whatever, relocate, and then all of a sudden this is all yanked away from them. They get 1 month severance, if I read correctly, which is, pennies on a dollar compared to what it would be for an NHL player or another, pro athlete in a more established league. Now you've got a significant portion of your professional players not knowing their future. Of course, the stars of the league know they're going to be fine, but an NHL fan would tell you the 10% of the league of stars, what happens to the other 90%? I think that's the big concern from the hockey world is what happens to these players that made the decision to be professional players that now may not have that option.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really tough landscape just in general and to break into even before, all this news happened. Because there are only 7 teams. There were only 7 teams in the PHF, that's 14 roster spots for goalies. And I mean, I think just given the way the NCAA has been, the way the professional women's hockey scene has been, there's so much goalie talent. And now you're down to less than 14 spots. You're down to 12 spots. And that's if, every team wants to roster just 2 goalies. I mean, I guess there's always the opportunity for, taxi squads and kind of reserve squads that would give more players an opportunity. But right now there just aren't a ton of opportunities, I guess, to, be competing regularly, which I think is what we can agree that, everyone wants. Everyone wants to play hockey. There just isn't as much opportunity to do that as before.
Now, when there was the split between the PHF, formerly the NWHL, and the PWHPA, what were the barriers between those two? I know it's probably a very complicated answer, but what were kind of the main barriers between those 2 leagues coming together collectively in the past before leading to now the PWHPA and the investors group, which I believe is Mike Walter and Billie Jean King are both part of it. What was the difference between them not forming there, whereas now the PWHPF and their investors are purchasing the PHF?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess that I would say that kind of goes back to, the reasons for the PWHPA forming in the first place. It was definitely inspired, I guess I would say. I don't think that's anywhere near the correct term, but it was kind of rushed along by the dissolution of the Canadian Women's Hockey League back in 2019. And there had been issues. I think everyone can admit there were issues with what was then the NWHL, that definitely kind of gave players who were in the CWHL who, wanted to keep playing, but there were some issues. There wasn't access to health insurance. There wasn't a formal union. The NWHLPA, which what became the PHFPA, wasn't a formal union. There was no CBA. There really wasn't a lot of protection for the players, and that was just one of the sticking points that really deterred a lot of these players from making the jump from the CWHL to what was then the NWHL, which turned into the PHF. And I don't think it's fair entirely to say that the PHF hasn't rectified so many of those issues that were originally presented to them as these are points of contention. And I think the PHF really did listen and addressed a good deal of those issues, but in the end, I think it really wasn't possible for these two, or at least the people with the money and the people with the power, believed it wasn't possible for these two organizations to coexist, even though they've been doing it for the past 3 years. It just didn't seem like the best option anymore, and I guess that's where the people with the money and the people with the power came in and kind of decided, we don't want to operate or launch a new league that is going to be in competition with an existing one. And I guess that's kind of where the buyout all kind of started.
So we know that Gary Bettman has been on record as saying that he's not going to offer any, maybe not that definitively, but they're not really interested in offering support unless there's one unified league. So if I don't want to be, dismissive and just say, like, well, all those players without jobs aside, but ultimately, once all these things are figured out, is this the best thing for the growth of the women's game? To get NHL support behind it, to get potential NHL affiliated sponsors behind it, is this ultimately the best path, in your opinion, for the development of the game?
I think long term, this is, a move that many people saw coming. I mean, there were questions about the structure of, was a merger going to be the best option? I think we can all agree that one league for all professional women's hockey players right now would be exciting. It would be great for sponsors, for broadcast deals, for support from fans, not having to choose between, do I want to support this team in Boston or this team in Boston? It kind of helps shape geographic loyalties and that kind of thing. But I think, just given the trajectory before this buyout happened, I think you could have made the argument that, we were in a great spot. The PHF had just increased their salary cap. Players who were signed to 2-year deals were given the opportunity to renegotiate those deals and, get more money. They were able to make a living wage. And I think obviously long term, one league is, what's best for women's hockey, but I think there definitely perhaps could have been a better way to go about doing the entire process that, didn't hurt quite so many people and leave quite so many people in the dust. I think that's kind of the sticking point for me. I had a really great conversation with some of my former colleagues at the Ice Garden a week or so back where, we kind of just talked about there's like, we've seen this before. We've seen the dissolution of a league before when it happened to the Canadian Women's Hockey League back in 2019, and we lost so many stats, so much history, so many records. And you really don't want to see that again. There's been a lot of news that this new entity isn't going to, take any of the branding from the PHF that already existed. And when you talk about that, you're talking about the Minnesota Whitecaps, who have existed for almost 20 years, and they're just kind of gone. They existed before the PHF, and then they were brought into the PHF, and now it's like, well, no more Minnesota Whitecaps, which is honestly kind of scary and really sad. I think in the long run, this is going to be a good thing, but in the interim, it's important to take the time to, mourn and grieve all of the memories, everything that's really sad. Yeah, I guess those are my thoughts on that.
So moving forward, then, this new league is yet to be named and is supposed to launch this upcoming January of 2024. I guess what would be the expectations for the new league as far as locations, teams, some of the players that will be highlighted in the league, and then I guess what would kind of be the structure of the league from your understanding, because like you mentioned, the PHF had just raised their salary caps and some players who in women's hockey, they couldn't just play hockey, like they had to also have other sources of income. What's that structure going to be like for this new league coming up?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are a bunch of people who are much more educated than I on this subject who have, received copies of the collective bargaining agreement that was rumored, but heavily rumored to have been ratified. It's not formally announced by any entity, but it's one of those things where it happened. But the general consensus is 3 teams in Canada, 3 teams in the United States, to kind of give equal opportunity and equal footing to the multitudes of players that are coming out of Canada, whether they're in the NCAA, on the national team, in the junior hockey prep school equivalent in Canada, and then have those same opportunities for their American counterparts. Cities are still to be determined. There's a lot of discussion that, maybe Chicago is one of them, but personally, as much as I would love that, as much as I think anyone who knows me knows that would be like my dream come true, I think they're also going to prioritize a lot about travel just in the early times. It's hard to force a group of 23 athletes to fly commercial from Chicago to Boston. It's not the same as busing, and busing however many hours that might be is really not, it's not professional. It's not what you want for a professional women's hockey team, or even a professional men's hockey team, any sort of professional sports team. It's not really fair. It's not really professional. So I think there has to be a lot of thought into the geographic distribution of these teams. Some locations that have been rumored: Toronto, obviously. I mean, you look at the sheer number of women's hockey players on the Canadian national team, and just in the NCAA and U Sports who are Toronto or Ontario natives, and that seems like pretty much a shoo-in. Then you look at Montreal. They have Captain Canada. They have Marie-Philippe Poulin. There's really no universe, I think, in which Toronto and Montreal don't have some of the strongest Canadian footholds in women's hockey. The third Canadian location that's been heavily rumored is London, Ontario. Already have the Ontario Hockey League's London Knights. They've partnered with them before, from the PWHPA side, and there's just a lot of opportunities. It's close enough to Toronto that it would be a bus ride. But in terms of the United States cities, there's really pretty much every city in the Midwest and East Coast has been thrown out there. There have been a lot of discussions. There's been a lot of fan activism. I don't know if that's the right word, but advocacy for certain cities. I've seen Pride diehards and the Boston Bruins diehards. That media organization has really been campaigning to get Boston on the list of potential cities. It's hard to imagine the city of Boston without professional women's hockey at this point. Just since the CWHL era, the NWHL era, Boston has a huge college hockey footprint, but that's not quite the same when you're talking about professional women's hockey. So I wish I knew more about cities. Obviously, I'm always pulling for Chicago. But then again, when you think about how realistic it is, it's not even super realistic to get from Chicago to Pittsburgh on a bus ride. So it's just one of those things you have to think about, and trust that maybe they'll make the right decision, and hope that they make the right decision.
Very original 1926 hockey vibes of taking buses and trains and,
Yeah.
and all that, and all the cities along the
You mean 100 years ago?
yeah along the St. Lawrence Seaway
Yeah.
or whatever. But
And Zach says in our chat, it's ridiculous. It's 2023, not 1923. They're pro athletes and shouldn't be working side jobs to afford being able to play. That's it. And hopefully, when all of this gets worked out, that the salaries will be fair and these professionals can be actual professionals and say, what do you do for a living? I am a hockey player. And that's what I do. I train all year round to maintain that job, and I don't have to go find a side hustle to have my career. That's the hope. And you mentioned how the Whitecaps were around forever before joining the PHF and NWHL. I got friends with the Chicago North Stars hockey team here in Chicago, and I know they've sort of like whispered about, yeah, maybe someday that could happen. They're here, they're established. I would love to see the North Stars jump in to one of these leagues, and I really think Chicago would support a women's team. I really do.
Yeah.
And you've got Fifth Third Arena, which
is expanding.
And by the way, we talked to Danny Wirtz and Jamie Faulkner at the draft, and they're like, yeah, nothing's been announced yet. Construction's happening now. I drove by Fifth Third yesterday. There's bulldozers out. There's sewage being put in. The building has begun at Fifth Third Arena. So it's going to be right there in a couple of years. I really hope that Chicago gets a team, because I do think, and you mentioned travel, it is very centrally located, 2 airports. It makes all the sense in the world, and I really think this would be a good way for the Blackhawks to prove. They say it a lot, but when you talk about inclusion, you talk about growing the game, you talk about all these things, this is a great opportunity to jump in and help make this happen in Chicago.
And you have a ton of star women's players that have come out of Illinois and the Chicagoland area, and probably none bigger than Kendall Coyne Schofield, who is part of the Blackhawks development staff. Like it just seems like that location would be perfect for this upcoming league.
Cami Granado is local as well.
Yes.
So
And
she's pretty
there's
good.
discussions about Hillary Knight as well, where she claims to be a hometown as well, as far as I understand. But
And thank you so much for the update. We appreciate it. I'm sure we'll be checking in several more times as news develops. But follow Ann on Twitter at Ann Tokarski. We appreciate your time. We'll talk to you next time, Ann.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Of course.
Thanks, Ann.
Thanks so much. Give her a follow, Ann Tokarski on Twitter. We got a little bit of an update before we sign off. This from Scott Powers. The Blackhawks and Philip Kurashev have yet to reach an agreement heading into their arbitration hearing scheduled for Thursday. It's become likely the case will be heard. According to a league source, Kurashev has filed a request seeking a 1-year contract with a $2.65 million cap hit, and the Blackhawks are seeking a 2-year deal with a $1.4 million cap hit. The arbitration could end up in either direction, but will likely meet somewhere in the middle, probably 2 years with a $2 million cap hit. That sounds about right to me.
sounds fair.
Sounds great. So it looks like that's going to head to negotiation. But look, the sides aren't far apart. Kurashev wants a 1-year deal, wants to bet on himself. The Hawks would like a little more security. So maybe they meet in the middle.
Yeah.
And I think that's the best of both worlds.
Yeah, I feel like 2 years, $2 million, that is enough time and a fair price for what he's done and what they, the opportunity he can get to prove that he's worth more down the road.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. We've seen the progression that he's made in the last 2 years that he's played. Let's see some more over the next 2. I think that's completely fair.
Agree with that. All right, before we wrap up.
That is why I would be a great arbitrator.
You should be. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We told you about the golf outing. Now we've got to tell you about our Crosstown Series takeovers coming up very soon. Next week is the first one. Cubs at White Sox at Guaranteed Rate Field. We're going to be in section 259, 7:10 first pitch. The pregame meetups at 4 p.m. at the Carrig Pub in Oak Forest. You'll be shuttled to and from Guaranteed Rate Field. AllCHGO.com/events to buy your tickets for the Cubs Wrigley version. That is August 16th. Sox at Cubs, Wrigley Field, section 425R. Pre-game meetup at 5:30 at a bar to be announced. Each ticket purchase comes with the new CHGO baseball shirt, Southside or Northside, based on your preference. Shirt and size will be chosen at checkout and order confirmation. Let's see which fan base is more diehard and sells out the takeover first. Jump on, get those tickets, allchgo.com. Again, that is July 26th at Guaranteed Rate Field or August 16th at Wrigley Field. Cubs versus White Sox. Always a good time. I personally have sworn off the Crosstown Classic because I've
You're
seen
over it?
too much nonsense from people. I saw a man and a woman get in a punching match. I've seen shirts torn off.
That tracks for a
lot.
summer baseball game in which neither of you are involved in.
And I just would like to, I always, whenever I'm at these games and I see people fighting, I just say, listen, we're all Bears fans. We're all Hawks fans.
Sure, yeah.
We're all Bulls fans. Let's just chill. It's okay. It's just sports, but it's going to be a good time. It seems like it's calmed down since the Cubs won the World Series.
Yeah.
Feels like the tension's not quite as intense as it was.
Yeah, Cubs fans have probably relaxed a little bit. And for the fact that neither team is really contending for much right now.
That never stopped them in the past.
That's true. Yeah. Fighting at games, it's just one of the dumbest things. Like, what are you fighting about? Fighting about a game? The two teams that you have no connection to other than saying, I like your colors of your shirt, and I don't like the colors of your shirt. It's just
fighting over sports in general is stupid.
Yeah,
usually fighting in general is stupid.
Usually, it's just dumb.
Yeah,
just dumb. Just take a breath, enjoy the game, and maybe buy the person that you're punching in the face a Goose Island beer, and they'll do the same for you. You can all put it behind you.
There you go.
Goose Island, making fighting in sports in the stands maybe happen, but also maybe not happen. Who knows? Hey, CHGO is proudly sponsored by Goose Island Beer Company. They have been Chicago's beer since 1988, and they have some of the best beers around. You got the Goose IPA, the 6-time medal winner at the Great American Beer Fest, always in style with its citrus aroma and bold hop finish. You have the Tropical Beer Hug, the dry hopped Imperial IPA, which is a 9.9 ABV, dangerously easy to drink. The Full Pocket Pills, the everyday beer. It's what the Goose Island beer brewers are drinking. And, of course, you have the 312, the golden cans, the golden staple of the Goose Island beer roster. You can get all of these and more ultra-fresh brewery-exclusive beers at the Goose Island Original Brewhouse on Clybourne Avenue in Lincoln Park. Or you can go to their tap room on Fulton Street in Westtown. Again, that is the Goose Island Beer Company, Chicago's beer.
It is Chicago's beer. Thank you. I always talk over the damn goose.
There are the horns.
They're just always flying overhead, and I'm not paying attention. All right, we're going to wrap things up. Thanks for being with us today. We want to thank Ann Tokarski for visiting the show. Got some more, a little bit more predicting done today that we're going to get to tomorrow.
Predicting.
As to who improved the most in hockey and who did not.
Yes.
But a very interesting side note on that article, and you never know what's going to happen between now and then. Hopefully we'll have some news on Philip Kurashev tomorrow to go over.
Yeah,
probably not till the later afternoon.
Is there
I
a
would imagine.
time? I don't know if we know a time, but yeah, I would say right around our show time is probably when they're having their meetings, and
I would think so.
Hopefully, it gets done fairly fast.
Yeah, I would imagine so. So be with us tomorrow, 2:00. Hopefully, Greg is back and feeling better. But until then, smash that like button on your way out. Make sure you're subscribed, and we'll talk to you tomorrow on the CHGO Blackhawks podcast.